We don't really do wireframes anymore. We kind of just skip that. Yeah, I feel like community is something I just do without meaning to half the time. So the biggest thing we do obviously is like the brand metaphors. I actually get very few clients from social. I think it's mostly...
Okay, Benten. So as a web designer or a team leader, what things or factors make you want to work again with a specific Webflow developer?
Yeah, my favorite Webflow developers are ones that are extremely collaborative. Like they can think on their own. They feel like they have freedom to kind of explore things a bit on their own. Don't take things quite as literally. Like if they have some ideas that they want to implement, I love hearing that kind of thing. So as you might know, I work a lot with a Webflow developer, Devin Fountain, and he's kind of like, we do almost all of our projects together. And he's great at like pushing back on even like certain design things because he's also a designer, thinking about different interactions and transitions that we could incorporate. Like there's a lot of times I just hand off a file and I don't even add like annotations or anything like that. He can kind of just interpret what I have and run with it. I also like when people push back too. Like if someone's just like, well, I'll implement it, looks good, no pushback whatsoever. Sometimes I'm a little bit wary of that. I like when people like to push back a little bit and say like, hey, maybe this section could be improved a little bit, or maybe we could make a couple tweaks here. So that's my favorite thing, is just being more collaborative, like throughout the whole process, even like early in the design phase, not waiting until like the very end when we're just handing files off to like start getting into the files. So that's how I like to work, is very collaborative, very open. There are like no wrong answers. I love to kind of explore a lot of possibilities throughout the process and think about like how we can improve things together.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Like you gotta have the collaboration, especially if you're like creating something like extraordinary or want to do something new. Of course, if one has like a very static website, the developer can be like a mindless robot, but no one basically likes that. But I gotta ask you, how much do you like open Webflow yourself? Do you find yourself pixel peeping on that side quite often?
Very little, actually. A lot of people think I'm a Webflow developer. I would love to be more in that realm, but I focus mostly on like the creative direction and design. I'll get into Webflow like once things are built on some of our own projects, just like adding case studies and adjusting content. So yeah, I do focus mostly on the design and hire other people to do the dev and do what they're best at. So maybe someday I'll push more into that. I have messed around with, some things with Webflow, but yeah, I focus mostly on the design and creative direction.
Yeah, beautiful. And as always, there's so much interesting stuff going on within the web design, web development world, but also outside of that. So you kind of have to pick your lane. But okay, before we go any deeper, we got to do some intros. So my name is Janne Parre. I'm your host today. I'm a Webflow dude all the way from Finland. And you're here for this guy, who is, of course, Benten Woodring. So Benten, you have done a lot of cool stuff. Just to give you a rundown of my list, there's of course the footer gallery, which is a gallery for website footers. You have also talked in Webflow Conf at some point. You participated in Relume Design League. That's very cool. You have a active community, local community, Pixel Pushers. And as your main geek, you run NOOON Studio, NOOON with 3 O's, where you obviously design and create awesome websites. But I also checked your LinkedIn and I saw that you have a history of all sorts of creative roles. And I'm curious, how did you find web design, or did web design find you?
I feel it does feel like web design found me. But yeah, if we go back, I actually didn't start with a background in design. I mean, I was kind of creative as a kid, like I would draw and stuff. But I went to school for business, and then afterward, the job market wasn't great. I ended up doing like an internship with a nonprofit, and then I got hired there. So I actually worked with like at-risk and homeless youth for 4 years before I did anything that resembled a career. It was actually a lot of fun, but I basically was tasked with running a screen printing business there and had to teach the kids like job skills. Obviously, I didn't really have any background on how to do that, but I worked on like trying to create like a curriculum. But I also had to learn how to like do screen printing. So that obviously involves some design. So I had to like kind of learn Photoshop, Illustrator, all that stuff, and some of the other software that you have to use. So I started doing that, like printing t-shirts and things. And then some of the clients eventually started asking like, hey, can you like design some of the t-shirts, or like, can you help us come up with a logo? And I was like, sure. So that's what I started doing. I think I charged $100 for my first like real freelance client with like this terrible logo that I made in Photoshop. But it was like a lot of designers, you get that first taste, like someone's going to pay me for this, like amazing. So that's kind of where I got hooked. And a little bit after that, like I'd been working there for several years, and then, you know, got married, and then my wife and I were about to have a kid, and I was like, oh, I need to make like more money. This nonprofit job is not covering the bills if we're going to have, you know, a kid. So I started looking around for jobs, and I had been doing a little bit of freelancing on the side. And then I landed at a corporate events company. So that was my first like real design job 4 years after I graduated. And up to that point, I'd just been kind of like screwing around, not really doing a lot. So that was like my first role. And I was working on like huge conferences for companies like, you know, like Chipotle, Indeed. I'm trying to think of other big companies like Salesforce. So it was a really good way to kind of get introduced to like the agency model and like what it's like to work with big brands. And it was very different. It was all very like, you know, it's like custom signage, screen graphics, like name badges. It's all a lot of very like print heavy stuff. So that was like a great background. And then after that, I ended up at I actually left and went full-time freelance for like a year and a half. Didn't do great just because I don't think I had enough experience under my belt. So didn't charge enough, worked way too many hours because I wasn't charging enough. And there was like literally zero work-life balance. I was working like 80 hours a week, and it was not great. And then after that, I ended up at a marketing agency. So I did a mix of like brand and print stuff there. And that's where I kind of stumbled into web design. They started taking on web projects. We didn't really, like, none of us really know what we were doing. We were kind of like figuring it out as we went, but got to do some like decent size projects, learned a little bit there. And then eventually I moved to an agency called Unfold. And that's where my career, like, just, I learned so much, just like absolute insane group of designers. And I felt like I was like just a total baby designer being there, like being in the same Figma file as everybody. I had to learn Figma and things like that. But just like watching everybody design like collaboratively all at the same time in the same file was just insane. And that's how I like ended up in like Relume Design League and some of the other things that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I'd say web design found me. I ended up kind of like shifting from being more like brand design, print design. And then when I moved to Unfold was when I officially became a web designer. I think that was like 4 years ago. Since then, I've worked at another agency called Benten. Now I run my own studio. But I really love the restraint of web design. Like brand is really fun. I was like decent at it, but not as fast. For some reason, there's something about web design I think that just like works with my brain. It's like I like the restraint. You have to kind of think in a certain way, but you're still like expanding upon brand with web. And I think that's kind of like where I really like to play, is taking the brand and expanding that into web and like thinking like a brand designer in brand design, and not just like reusing a bunch of the same components for every project. I like to think like literally like with a blank canvas every single time. Yeah, to say long answer, but I would say that web design definitely found me. As this, once I kind of discovered it, I was like, oh yeah, this feels right. Yeah, and I've really dug in and specialized with that.
Yeah. I totally get that. Like web design sandbox, I like it too. First of all, the projects are like not finite, but clearly like structured, and they will end at some point unless you like go on a retainer. I like that the projects change. But if you were like just a brand designer, you just like design the stuff that everyone else uses. But as a web designer, might be and often is the website. I mean, that is like the biggest branding canvas, if you may, like the biggest thing that communicates that brand. So it is cool. Of course, I'm quite biased, but hopefully all the audience members are too. So web design is awesome, but I'm curious, you have done this for quite a while. So have your like approach to web design evolved in some way, or to maybe phrase it more concretely, have your like design process changed over the years in any way? Of course, there's AI and stuff right now, but yeah, are there any changes?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like a lot of times I feel like it's kind of like the bell curve, that meme that you see. It's like
Yeah.
just make cool design, and it's like, no, we need to do like, you need wireframe sketches and like different frameworks and, you know, a whole design system. And that's like, no, I just want to make cool stuff. And I think over my career, I think I've simplified and just keep cutting things out to the point where like my process just becomes leaner and leaner. Before, it's like I would do, I mean, it's not that much leaner, but like the biggest thing I've probably changed is like we don't really do wireframes anymore. We kind of just skip that, because most of the time, at least for our projects, we're doing smaller sites for startups. So it's like 3 to 7 pages. You don't really need to think about information hierarchy or like information architecture as much, because they're all pretty similar. But I used to like spend a lot of time like researching, brainstorming, sketching, doing a lot of that. And I think a lot of it probably just comes with the experience. Like I just don't need as much of that anymore. Like I don't even need inspiration half the time. I just kind of just jump into the file and get started, or have like a pretty clear idea. I think the biggest thing that's probably changed, one is just like, yeah, making the process leaner, cutting out unnecessary steps. And 2 is thinking more conceptually. So before, it's like, what are like extra things I can add in here to make it look cool, but it doesn't really tie back to any like strategy or have any meaning. And you're just kind of like keep adding stuff and hope it looks okay. And for me, a lot of times now I just like write. So as a creative director, I'm kind of guiding our designers and like what the overarching idea is. So obviously we have like, you know, a discovery process with our clients. Say we do like kind of a short questionnaire, get an understanding of their goals, like what are their objectives that they're trying to accomplish. And then, you know, kind of get an understanding for like what's their special sauce, like what makes them unique as a company. And we take all that information, and then I'll just kind of sit with it and think about the core ideas. So like I said, we always start with a blank slate. We don't have any like kind of library or anything like that. We literally just stare at a blank screen, and I'll kind of think through that, and I'll write and kind of, you know, think about what the overarching concept could be. Like, what I learned this a lot from Matthew Smith at Benten, my last agency, where he was creative director, and we would think in brand metaphor. So it's like, what are certain things that could evoke a feeling? Like, how do you want a website to make you feel? We're not just telling people like, here are the features of the product, here's what it does. We want people to kind of have this certain feeling pulled out. And that's what is memorable. It's like more of a feeling, not just like, what kind of typeface did they use? What colors did they use? We're using those as ingredients to generate that feeling. So that's what I think about. I think more concept level versus just getting straight into design. So that's probably the biggest thing that's changed is, yeah, thinking about the overarching concept. And sometimes it can take a minute to get there. It's not always a straight line. But yeah, I'll just think about all the different ingredients and then kind of hand that off to our designer for him to get started. And yeah, so I'd say leaner and then just thinking more high level concept.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. I'd like to hone in on that because, well, I find myself in some sort of like how would I call it, like design plateau, and I believe that quite a few of our audience might at some point be in the similar situation where you like design websites, but you realize that all the sites like look a bit like each other, so there's nothing like new coming out of your designs. So any like advice or tips or ideas how one could like overcome that sort of design plateau?
Yeah, it is easy to, I mean, you'll definitely get clients that are like, we want our site to look exactly like theirs. I think a lot of it's just having like understanding the client is really helpful. Obviously, being able to kind of sit with them and understand like their goals. Sometimes they think they want a certain thing, but they actually need this thing over here, and being able to kind of understand that. So sometimes like, you know, personal preferences will get in there, like with clients, or like, oh, I don't like that specific approach. but you can always point them back to like the initial discovery process. Like, okay, well, what were our goals? Who is the audience that we're trying to reach? What resonates best with them? Obviously, if like you're trying to differentiate yourself in some way from the competitors and from the market, there are certain approaches that you can do to either be more similar, which is one strategy, or like more unique, which is another. I'd say like, yeah, being able to kind of get to the root of what the clients are trying to achieve. With us, it's like we're working with a lot of startups. So it's, they're either trying to raise another series, like speak to investors, recruit, and kind of like build their team. And all of them obviously want to establish like credibility, establish their brand presence. So leaning into that can really help, just making sure that you feel aligned with that. But yeah, I really like to think about feeling. I know it's like a really hard thing to tack down. But we had one client actually, eco.com, they're a Web3 company. And this is an example that I shared at FlowFest in Manchester earlier this year, where I talked about concepting. And as a lot of startups, like things are shifting, they don't always necessarily know exactly like who they are, what they do, because it's always just evolving. And we were kind of struggling with that with them. Things kept changing. We kept kind of going in circles. We did the approach where it's like, just get into design. Don't worry about like an overarching concept. We felt like they had an established brand already, but we just kept going in circles. And eventually we got on a call with them. I was like, all right, let's chat through this. And I wanted them to tell me like, what makes you unique? What is your special sauce? Like we'd already talked about this, but we just kind of needed a regroup because a lot of things have been shifting on their end. And eventually they said, they were kind of saying like, well, so basically they allow like cross-network transactions, basically is kind of the summary. So instead of needing a bunch of different platforms, you can just use theirs, do everything you want there in one spot. And they were saying, it feels like you just like click a button and a bunch of things happen behind the scenes and you don't know what it is, but it just works. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. There's not really anyone else that can say that, at least in their area, at least at the time. And as they kept talking, I was like, you know what? That kind of feels like magic. Like it's like something happens, you don't know how it works, but you know it works. And they're like, yep. And you could just see like something click with them that they're like, yeah, that's the feeling we want. We want to evoke a feeling of like this sense of like magic. Some of the other words that I had at the time were like speed, which, any Web3 company can say that. I was trying to remember what the other one was, but it was very generic. So they were like, okay, let's lean into this idea of magic. So I just grabbed some like reference images from Cosmos that felt kind of like ethereal and interesting. And they're like, yes, this is like evoking the feeling we want. And I was like, okay, I think we have what we need. Let's translate that into a web design. And that one's kind of hard because it's like, what visual do you use? But they said they really like the idea of like kind of like a portal. So we kind of leaned into that. So on their website, eco.com, it's kind of it's very simple, but it's just like gradients and you kind of like zoom out of a portal. It's like very abstract, lots of like soft gradients and things like that. But we were able to accomplish what they wanted. And it's a very simple site. But once we like landed on that idea of magic, like as the core concept, it just tied everything together. It's like, how do you approach a button hover state that feels like magic? What color palette do you use? What visuals do you use? And then once you land on that, it just really ties everything together. So anytime you're like yourself or the client is kind of like, what is our next step? It's like, okay, how can we tie that back to our original concept? And it really ties things together. So it's kind of like light brand strategy. It's not like real brand strategy, but that seems to work really well for us, is having that core idea.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm already getting excited and like pumped up, and I'd like to jump into Figma and design some stuff. But yeah, where to start? You mentioned, of course, concepting and discovery. And you really like, if you want to do something like beautiful, something extraordinary, you really need that secret sauce, because every client, at least my experience is that every client wants to seem credible, and they want to somehow differentiate themselves. But they usually want to like stay in the same like sphere of the field, kind of end up balancing that you want to look different, but still look like credible and safe and so on. I believe, as you said, like the concepting and discovery are so important. Again, I want to like hone in even a bit deeper, like what do you do for like concepting? What sorts of like assets do you show? How like deep do you go, and do you have lots of like different crafts? And like tell us everything, every little detail. What do you do?
Yeah. So what I do basically at the studio now is just like a blend of all my favorite things that I picked up at the other agencies I've been at throughout my career. So the biggest thing we do obviously is like the brand metaphors. We kind of go through that exercise where we think about what are like the visual cues, what are the overarching metaphors. So those are your like, usually we have three and we'll break them out into three distinct directions. So one could be magic, one could be like speed or something like that. And then we also have like visuals that we'll kind of work with, but we'll break those out into three explorations. So we only do like the hero section and we'll kind of play with typography and supporting visuals. And sometimes we'll even bring in existing visuals. Like we don't always create everything fully custom because we're just trying to get a sense of the direction to go. But it's mostly like a hero, three distinct hero directions. And we'll base that on our like discovery process, but we try to push them all to be pretty unique too. So we have one that's like kind of straight down the middle, kind of expected, one that's maybe really bold, but still fits the brand. And then one that's like a wild card. So that's usually kind of how we like to do it. Like I actually like to push the boundaries a little bit to where people are like, whoa, that's like way too far out there. I'm like, cool. Okay. Now we know what the boundary is. We can stop there and kind of rein it in. I actually like to do that. Some people don't like that. They're like, oh, this is like way too out of left field. But it really, I like to be able to see like, okay, where's the boundary? And then kind of bring it back. So we'll have three distinct directions. We'll have like typography and color palettes incorporated there. And we usually will have this ready within the first week. So we have like kickoff on Monday, talk with the client, and we'll start playing with ideas, present on Friday. And then usually we try to get them to pick a direction. As you know, a lot of times they'll kind of pick a couple of things from each direction. So we usually try to account for that. But yeah, you know that pain.
I totally know that. Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll use, we have those three distinct directions tied to our brand metaphors. We'll have like our visual cues. And we also like to think about their product too. Like what does their product do? Because obviously you still need to communicate that. So if it's like, oh, it's collaborative, or it's like async, or agentic, different, like we're working with a lot of AI companies, as a lot of people are today. It's like, how do you communicate those? That's like the what makes up their product. And then we also need to think about visually how we represent it. So it's like, are we going to use like a monospace type, or are we going to use, is it going to be kind of clean? Are we going to have like kind of a grid layout? Do we want it to feel technical? How are we going to approach that? And a lot of times I'll just kind of like during the discovery, I'll just like write down keywords or just things that come to my mind. It's like that things they'll say that I'm like, oh, that feels a little bit unique. Like one company, they're a huge like equipment rental company essentially, but they also built their own software, and they're based in the Midwest. So we're kind of balancing this feeling of like tech, like technical feeling software, but they're also like very personable. Like you can call them and get on the phone with like a real person in like 30 seconds. And they're not salesy. They're very warm and friendly, as like a lot of Midwestern people are. And so that felt like really unique. It's like they built this product for themselves. So we kind of want to lean into that like warmth and person and like human feeling. So incorporating, like they had great photography, lots of people. So incorporating that can kind of set them apart from like the usual, just like black and white SaaS company. So there are ways to kind of lean into that. So that's how we approach it. Three unique hero directions for them to choose from. And then we kind of hone in from there. And then carry that across the rest of the site. And it saves us a lot of time, because in my, like at Native Digital, the marketing agency I used to work at, we would do like whole, like 2-3 pages for like multiple concepts. And I think it kind of can put clients in a corner where like, they're like, oh man, they've gone away for like 3 weeks. They've been working so hard on this. I don't really want to change anything. I feel like I have to pick one of these. So we like to bring clients in, and from the first day they have access to the file. If they want to hop in there and see our messy files, they can. We ask them questions kind of as we go. We don't do like a big reveal because of that, because I don't like to make people feel like they're kind of put in a corner. So it feels more collaborative. They could get buy-in early before we really get into like production mode.
That is actually quite nice. Usually I do the 3 drafts of the first page, but the first page might be quite long. So there is the risk that I do quite a lot of work. So I might actually try out do just the hero section, because that is obviously the most important and usually the most visual section. And that kind of conveys and gathers everything you want to like communicate with the whole page. That is actually quite good tip just for me. But okay, how about like if we jump from the client world or client collaboration to the like internal team? I know that you at Noon you try to push the boundaries, so to speak, and do something extraordinary. And I wonder, with a team, how can one like do that? Because it's easy, for example, for me to imagine something then, and I already know that that's like possible to like develop. But when you have a team, you gotta kind of have the back and forth all the time. And as you said at the start, that you like to get like feedback or pushback from the developer. So that is just like one designer and one developer, but you might have, of course, all sorts of people in the team. So at Noon, how do you manage that? And do you have any like specialties or tips for collaboration inside the team?
Yeah. Yeah. So with any project, it starts with like kickoff, obviously, and then I'll kind of start thinking about creative direction. And then usually our main designer right now is Tim Boros. He's like absolutely insane visual web and product designer. So I usually will kind of think about overarching concepts. He'll already have been in the call. And so he'll be like, start grabbing inspiration and other things that he thinks might work well. Pull all of my creative direction together. I might get some like initial visual references and things together for him and kind of like build some guardrails. That's mostly what my job is like provide three really clear directions with some pretty clear guardrails for him to kind of like explore within. And then most of our teams for like project teams are usually built up of like 4 people or so. So it's usually myself as creative director. We'll have a lead designer. We'll have a project manager. We'll have a Webflow developer or whatever platform we're building on. And then we'll usually have an animator as well. So we usually incorporate like Lottie animations or other similar animations on most of our sites. So that's kind of the framework. As soon as we get into design, even our developers are in the file. So like they kind of know what's happening. We'll kind of hop in there and kind of take a look too. And we like to think about animation and things like that kind of early on, and maybe certain interactions or transitions, and bring them in early, be like, hey, is this even possible? Like we have this idea. Does it make sense? Are we building it correctly? And that helps a lot too. So we can kind of get everyone's wheels turning. And then even our animators will come in early too. And we'll kind of give them like a general idea, like, hey, here's roughly what we're thinking. Sometimes we'll do full storyboards of like a specific animation if we want something really to be a certain way. But most of the time it's like, hey, here's a rough idea. Like what kind of ideas do you have? How can we push the boundaries? You obviously know like motion better than we do. So like what ideas do you have? So it's like very collaborative. We're not like no ideas are off limits. And that seems to really help as well. And we all work fairly async. Like most time we're not necessarily designing alongside each other. We're kind of all on different, like we're in similar time zones for the most part, but we kind of all work at different paces. So we can kind of see like what's been worked on over here. I can hop in, provide some feedback. If I have ideas, if I want to like riff on a section, I'll do that. Same with like our developers. They usually have some ideas as well, like bring in some references. So I'd say overall, it's like pretty collaborative, and it seems to be working pretty well. We kind of all have our roles that we play within, but then we'll overlap as needed to kind of like share those ideas.
That is always fascinating. Of course, like differs from project to project. But I'm curious, do you always work with a 4-person team, or do you have leaner setups or maybe bigger setups for some other projects?
Most of our projects are pretty similar, actually. Even our bigger sites, which we don't do massive sites. Like the biggest we'll do that we've done so far is like mid 20-page range. Because most of the time it's, if we're working with like an enterprise company, usually we're kind of working with their marketing team. So we kind of like build the framework and everything to get them started, and they'll kind of like run with it after that. So pretty much is always a 4 to 5 person team on almost every project. We do have some retainers that are a little bit different, where we have a few different people kind of in and out on those projects. But yeah, I'd say there's usually a designer, a developer. We have our PM who manages all of our projects. and then typically an animator. So that's kind of the overarching theme. And then I'll be support as needed. So yeah, it is almost exactly the same on every project, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, cool. And it's of course like cool to see the team come together and having the dream team and like knowing that okay, with this group everything is possible and we can do cool stuff. So that's very helpful if one gets to be a part of that kind of team, of course. But yeah, one thing almost slipped my mind before we go to all the other projects, the side hustles and whatnot. You mentioned the enterprise projects, but this applies to everything. Like nowadays in Webflow, there's a big push for components-based building. And of course, you can do like all sorts of design systems in Figma. So do you often end up doing like some sort of system in Figma and some sort of system on the website platform so that the client can like use it? And yeah, any thoughts on those?
Yeah, once we get like design established and everything, we do like we'll use templates and things in Webflow. So especially most startups and most enterprise always have like, they've got like their product pages, their services pages, maybe feature pages where they need like a single template that they can quickly duplicate and populate without needing to, bring us in every single time. So that's how we like to approach it, is for those kind of pages, build a template that'll flex for different lengths of content, try to consider all the different ways it might be used so they can, like their marketing teams can easily spin up new pages. That's probably the main thing. But obviously, we use components and things like that. We don't go too crazy on the design side. We keep it pretty light. We just use like type styles and color styles, components for buttons. But that's pretty much it. We don't go too crazy and like componentize like sections and things like that because most of our sites are smaller. Again, we try to like keep it pretty lean. So the developer just has just enough for what they need to build things out. But yeah, we do try to think ahead so that clients can pick it up. At the end of all of our projects too, we have like, we'll do training so that we bring them on, we'll launch with them, but we'll also record a video so they have everything they need. We can hand it off and they can share it with their whole team. It doesn't need to just be one person. So they have a client hub with all their final files, animation files. They'll have a recording, any other information they might need so that they can just hand it off to their team. It's all in one spot. And then we'll support the client too, like usually for a week post-launch. So if there's any like lingering little things they want to tweak or that, weren't caught earlier, we don't want to just like leave them out to dry, so that we give them some support there. And then sometimes we'll stay on for like a retainer and we'll like move them into like our retainer setup where they can like make requests and things like that. But yeah, generally we try to think a little bit ahead so that, they don't need us as much. They can kind of run their own site with their own team, which is kind of the ideal, especially with like Webflow. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. Even if you have a retainer or something like that, of course, the developer or whoever does not want to be the one fixing like typos or stuff, it's always good if the client can do that sort of stuff by themselves. Quite many, Webflow folks and designers do a lot of those videos like Loom videos, or there's other apps, and I like those too. So if there's someone listening and you find yourself like doing all sorts of little management stuff, there's a big recommendation for just doing the videos. And I usually do the videos like about everything that is a bit more complex than usual. So it might be just one like element or one section. If there's something custom to it, I usually do a video for that. So that is awesome thing and good for the clients. But okay, let's move on. I'm very curious about the Relume Design League. You have been a part of it, and to me, it's like a scary thought to be designing live kind of against someone. So what was your experience and how did you end up participating in that thing?
Oh man, yeah, Relume was so cool, the design league. So I was introduced to Josh Lowe, who ran it right at I think it was at the beginning, like right when they were kicking things off, through one of my coworkers at Unfold. So he met Josh at State of Flow, which is a Webflow conference in Florida. And so we just got on a call. He was like, hey, Josh is like really cool. You should meet him. He has this like thing that he's building called Relume Design League. And that's where we started chatting, and yeah, then I got thrown in as one of the contestants. And yeah, the first one was rough. It is like definitely an adjustment, like designing. Obviously, you're not designing like it's virtual, but it's still like lots of people are watching you, and you have to do it. Like it's like definitely the feeling when like someone's standing over your shoulder and watching you design, where your brain just like shuts down. It doesn't work anymore. It's so funny. So you kind of have to practice a little bit. The first one I did, I didn't even finish. It was like I think it was like a hamburger, like restaurant website that we had to do, and I didn't even get to the footer. We're obviously using like Relume components, which helps, but I like to break things a lot, so and like kind of make it a little bit more unique. So there's a little bit of learning curve. And then the second time, I was like, all right, I'm gonna practice some more, and spent a lot of time just. I would literally just like time myself and like give
Yeah.
myself. We would practice with like a wireframe or something on a new topic because we wouldn't always know what the prompt would be. So I just kind of practice. I would like try to choose, come up with like fonts and colors. I'm like, oh, these could probably work for like any kind of category. So I would kind of get those together just so I could easily remember them. And so my second time was a lot better. I went up against Fonz Mans, and we did a electric car company, kind of like it was sort of like Rivian style, and that one went a lot better because I actually practiced. And I've done several others since then, but that I still tell Josh to this day, like he's been huge for my career because not only did he make me like a much faster designer, it's like when you have 30 minutes, you don't have time to think. You literally have to rely purely on intuition. So you get to see like what you actually have when it comes down to it. And sometimes there's something there, sometimes there's not. So that's where like practice can really help. But yeah, you don't have time to like go find the perfect font or like find the perfect color palette or think of the perfect layout. You literally just have to start designing. You can't hesitate at all. So you get to lean a lot on your intuition. And since then, it's made me a much better designer because I don't have to rely as much on existing things out there. I can just kind of pull from my repository that's just like in my head. So that helps a lot. And then he also helped me just like get connected with a lot of people. So a lot of people heard about me because of Relume Design League, which really helped me down the road when I actually start to like launch my own studio. I think that played a huge part in as well, being able to have that network to lean on. So it was great. I've done a couple other collaborations with Josh too, with like the arena and some of his like boot camp kind of style workshops, which have been a lot of fun. I think it's like a very special and unique idea, and I'm excited to see it like keep growing because I think, especially in this day and age, like being able to hop in with like some of the world's like best designers and like learn from them is amazing. And it feels kind of like a gym kind of setup. Like people go around and like you're like the kind of like the coach or the instructor and go around and see people's designs. It's a really cool setup. So I'm excited to see him keep pushing that.
Yeah, that is exciting, and it somehow like it. I don't know what it is, but it feels like that even in our small little web design field, there is this like some sort of like higher goal or some sort of arena where you can go and meet your maker or compete against others. Yeah, there's something about it. But I'm curious, have you continued with your training regimen? Do you still still time yourself and do some practice rounds?
I should, especially like being more in the creative director role. You do spend a little bit less time designing. Those almost feel like little mini sprints because you jump in like between meetings. You're like, okay, here's an idea I have. I think it's a good exercise. Actually, at Unfold, we would do that kind of thing sometimes. Like on Fridays, we would all practice like illustration, for example. And even though I'm not an illustrator, I would still jump in and we would like work on something for an hour. It was like a really good way to like understand like light and color and different tricks that you can use in Figma to add depth. So I would love to bring that back because I think it's a good practice to have, is just practicing your craft, even specifically when it's not like a client project. I think that's where like side projects can be a lot of fun too. It's like doing something purely for yourself and like doesn't have to be, it's not for anybody else. So yeah, I think we should bring it back.
Yeah, yeah. I've been meaning to build my own some sort of workout routine because as a freelancer, There are times that I land a big project. It might be like just a development project, and then I work on that like multiple months and never open Figma or just open it to reference the design that I'm building in Webflow. I kind of would benefit most definitely from that sort of like design routine. And of course, one can like publish those, and one should publish those and do content out of that. Everybody needs to do content nowadays, so why not use those? Actually, that brings to my mind one thing I wanted to ask you about your like relationship to social media and publishing and showing your design work. Of course, quite a few people encouraged people to publish more, but what's your stand and how's your content game going?
It's honestly it's like a necessary evil, I think. Like it's very like I would not be here if it wasn't for sharing on social, like a lot of people. It can also be kind of draining though, like when you're like, I just want to get work done. I don't want to be distracted by this stuff. So I go in and out. But like I still love it because that's how I've met so many people like yourself and so many other people in my network. It's like I would never know these people otherwise. And like I know people all over the world now just because of that. And then you can meet them like in person, which is always great. So I think it's a great way to like grow your personal brand, to like learn from other people. And now I have like all these little networks and communities of people that I can reach out to because of it. But I would encourage everybody to like share your work because like no one knows you exist. You have to be kind of annoying to like be like, hey, here's what I made today. And you also obviously get business out of it. Like we've had, 5-figure projects land within minutes of like a single tweet, which is crazy. So it's like there's definitely a place for it. But it can be hard to prioritize, I think, for me personally. So I kind of go in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely worth pursuing.
Okay, I believe I hear the audience like shouting, "What was the tweet that landed the client?" And to continue with that, is social media like your main way to get new clients, or are there any other channels?
I actually get very few clients from social. I think it's mostly just staying top of mind is kind of like the point of social. So there are very few that we can tie directly to that, maybe 2 or 3 projects, but it's mostly word of mouth. So I've spent a lot of time like building my network over the years and building a referral network, which has been something I've been working on over the last year or so. So I'd say, at least 90% of our work are referrals. And now we're at the point where people we don't even know are referring us, which is great. That's a great spot to be in. But they also typically will convert a little bit faster if they're, they already know someone that they trust has already referred them. That helps a lot. So it's a little bit less work. But yeah, I'd say the social game is just to stay top of mind and continue building that network.
Yeah, but you mentioned the referral network. Like, how structured is that? Is that like just your thing? I know that there are things like BMI and those sorts of things. So, are you talking about something like that, or what do you mean by the referral network?
Yeah, it's gotten a little bit more structured over time. At first, it was just like people, like friends that own agencies, just referring, like not really expecting anything in return. I've tried to make a little bit more structure to like where it's a win-win for everybody. So we do this a few different ways. One is just like a referral fee. So we kind of just send out contracts to people that, get a lot of work in. Maybe they do brand only, they don't do web, or like it's just a project that they don't have the time for. And so we'll cut them a percentage or a flat fee for certain projects that come in. So that encourages them to like obviously forward people's names along. If they can get a few grand out of it, then it's kind of a win-win for everybody. Another is we have like more official partnerships. So there's one like with brand studios where, maybe we're one of or the only web studio that they refer work to. So we'll cut them a percentage. We do the project and it works well for everybody. And we've done a lot of projects with them. So that helps the process be more smooth. So one studio we do that with is a Primary Studio. They do brand sprints. They did like the Lovable rebrand, Paper, a lot of other companies out there. And we'll take a good chunk of their clients if they want to bring on and do web projects. So that one's been really good for the business. And a lot of ways that these relationships have started is by doing pro bono work. So some people I think have like kind of conflicting views on that. It's like you should never work for free, but we kind of do it strategically. So it's if someone comes to us and they're like, hey, how much would you charge for this? But we see kind of a different opportunity. It's like, hey, we won't charge you, but we'll do this as a trade for referrals. Maybe they have a really good network and they like are actually interested in sharing referrals. Then we kind of will do those strategically throughout the year. We'll do like 3 or 4 of those a year, and we'll still send a contract to like just be like, this was the price. We'll cross it out. Just trade for referrals, and we'll treat it like a regular project to the best of our ability. Like still client work will paid client work will take precedence still, but we've also used that to build our network where we just continue expanding that to where we get referrals in from a lot more people. So we'll balance it with, like actual partnerships with other studios and then doing pro bono work. And it's worked pretty well actually. So that's where most of our work comes in, from referrals. But we're definitely intentional about it. We try not to do like, we're not just doing pro bono projects for everybody because our time's limited. But that's been kind of our strategy.
Yeah. About pro bono, of course. Never say never. Like there are people that say that you should not do work for free, but there are like other valuable things besides money. So definitely there might be big opportunities like that. Yeah, there's so much stuff that I'd like to talk with you, but I gotta take it back to you mentioned those like communities, and I know that you are running the pixel pushers, your local community, and I checked the website and I was amazed like how far you have taken this. My imagination of a local like community is just like a Facebook group that sometimes manages to meet in person. But what's the like original story of pixel pushers, and how can you keep up a local community or keep it active, if you may?
Yeah, I feel like community is something I just do without meaning to half the time. At least that's what I've been told. It's like I did a design challenge thing called Dare to Share last year, where we basically encouraged people to post their work every day, and then it turned into like a whole thing. Like there's like a Twitter community. We did contests with like where we brought in like Pablo Stanley, Dan Petty, Webflow, lots of others to like sponsor and like provide like thousands of dollars in prizes. That turned into like a whole thing. We ended up kind of like tapering it off a little bit later last year, but that was like really cool. Another one is Pixel Pushers, like you said. I also have like a small Slack community that's like a invite only thing with just like kind of like our closest freelancer friends to like pass work around. And that's been really, really valuable. Devin and I started that purely because we were trying to solve our own problem of like, hey, we want to know when all of our friends are available, what their rates are. But it's like getting really annoying having to like email everybody or like DM them all separately every single time. So now we have that community. We can like throw out projects like where we might need someone to join us on a project, or where we just have work that we can pass along. And I truly believe like there's plenty for everybody. So we pass work around all the time, share inspiration. But Pixel Pushes is a great one because it's in person. Like I feel like a lot of us don't really get as much of that these days, especially working remotely. And so I live in a small town in South Carolina, and I was looking around for creative communities, and there wasn't one. It was so weird. There are small meetups here and there that I've like since learned about. And I was originally going to do a Friends of Figma chapter here, but they were on hold because of the Adobe acquisition at the time. I was like, screw it. I'm just going to start my own. Like I got tired of waiting around. So it just started with like just texting everyone I knew in the area, DMing them on LinkedIn, be like, hey, we're going to meet at a brewery. Everyone buys their own drinks, but we're just going to hang out and talk design. And that's how it started. And it's, I like a lot of things. I try to do like the most minimum amount of effort that makes it still worth it, because obviously I've got other things going on, but I still want it to be like a good time for everybody. So we've been doing that a year and a half. I now have like a co-host now. He has a great network here. He's lived here a long time. He's very rooted in like the design community. And so that's kind of helped grow the number of people that come. We kind of host it at his like co-working building that he's at. So that makes it super easy. But literally it's just, we buy pizza, we buy some drinks, everyone comes, hangs out. A lot of times we'll have a speaker, like someone that is local to the community. They can talk about their design process or running a business, maybe like an illustrator, brand designer, things like that. That's kind of like on topic. And yeah, we'll just get people together. It's not huge. It's like 40 to 50 people. But we also have sponsors now, like Nicer Studio. They're a Webflow studio and product agency. And yeah, they've been able to like help us out with covering some of those expenses, which has been great. I really a lot of these things I do selfishly for myself. Like I'm like, I just want to meet people. I want to know like who's here, like what other agencies are here, what other designers and freelancers and devs and all of the creatives, and it's been great. So it's very low key, not super fancy, but people seem to really appreciate it. There hasn't been anything here like that in 10 years, which is crazy. It's just nuts to me. But yeah, we love it.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word low key if you have sponsors and speakers and stuff. Like if you just had pizzas, that would be like low key. But I'm like very inspired by this. We should get something like that going on here in Finland. And yeah, of course, there's like those internet communities. It's good to be part of those, but especially the big ones where there's like thousands of people. It really gets like overwhelming, and you end up just lurking around and seeing what people post there. And usually it is quite much just self-promoting or something like that, asking about issues and so on. But a local community where maybe even it grows a bit, like the start will be a small group where people actually know each other, and actually like end up seeing each other in real world. That would be like awesome, and I'd like to see more of that. And I believe that there is some sort of like need for that after COVID and everything, and lots of us like work like me from their home or some co-working space, and they just do not see like colleagues or people that do the same kind of job. So that is awesome to see. Any tips how I or someone in the audience could get that sort of thing started?
Yeah, I would say don't overthink it and don't overcomplicate it. Like just do it and do it consistently. There are going to be times when it's awkward and like one or two people show up, and that's totally fine. Like I've been doing it a year and a half, and I feel like it's just now getting going. Just stay super consistent. Like we just do it the third Monday of every quarter, or we do it once a quarter on like the third Monday of whatever that month is. And we just do that every single time, same place, same time. So people kind of come to expect that. We've started adding some like mini ones in between, but literally like spend as little time as possible. Like don't overthink it. Be like, just literally text everyone you know, tell them to invite their friends. Just say, hey, food's on us. Come hang out. That's it. And then just do that on repeat. And eventually you'll learn the things that you need to add to it. Like you'll get feedback from people like, hey, what if we had speakers? Like I hadn't really thought of that. It wasn't really on my radar. People love that. And then people were like, well, what if we had other things? Like what if we could just like grab lunch together, do a happy hour that's not part of the official thing? And again, you just invite people. I use Luma as the invite like events platform. It's great. That's all you need. We didn't even have a website until recently. I've started like recording talks. I just use my iPhone. I use Riverside, throw it up on YouTube so other people can enjoy it too. But don't overthink it, and then just stick with it. Don't expect it to be perfect. Just kind of iterate and learn as you go. It'll be fun. Anyone's going to appreciate like that kind of initiative, and like most people are like itching for community. So go for it. Also, you can always ask me questions like if you have any. So I love doing this stuff. I'm like a total nerd. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, so you should definitely do it.
Consistency is one big thing. As in content creation, one should strive for consistency, but it is simple, but it is not easy, of course.
Mm.
Yeah. If you get one or two friends to do it with you, it is easier to do and manage. But yeah, we have tried like a Webflow meetup with Felix Means, who is also living in Finland. So I should call Felix that we gotta try this one again. But okay, there are still couple of topics that I want to talk with you. The first one kind of relates to footer.design, which is your footer gallery, which is awesome. I believe at some point I did a video about the gallery to YouTube, and that is such a cool little project. Well, little, it is actually quite big, I would say. But yeah, how do you see like side projects and their purpose or meaning or value for creators, designers, maybe even developers? Should everybody have something like that?
I'm biased, but yes, I think so. I think side projects are like, for me, it's most time I'm trying to solve a problem like for myself, but it's also like a really good excuse to work with people you might not have worked with before and just do something for yourself. So with footer, like I've never been good at designing footers. They're like ironically kind of tough to design. And a lot of times they're just kind of forgotten about. It's just like a random like link tree design at the bottom. Like don't think about it. And I was actually looking for footer inspiration, and I was like, how is there no website about footers? I feel like it's kind of an important piece. Like there was obviously like awards and you can look at the categories, but it's kind of buried and they don't specifically focus on that. And so I just started tweeting about it. I was like, hey, does anyone know if there's like a footer inspiration site out there? And I learned there really wasn't. And I was like, why don't we start one? So I just started playing with mockups, and that's actually how I met Devin Fountain, who runs NOOON Studio with me. And if it wasn't for that side project, we probably would have never worked together. And he was like, hey, if you design it, I'll build it. And I was like, sweet. So we did that. We also got some other people like Fonz came in, did the logo. Matt Cram is another great designer who came in and helped us with like curating everything, helped us design things and come up with ideas. He also helped with like scheduling posts and everything. And so I was able to get a lot of things out of that, more than just footer inspiration. Like I met some new friends, people that I work with still to this day. And it also kind of started like now there are a bunch of other micro like niche inspiration sites out there, like Navbar Gallery and like 404 Gallery, like Storefront, which is like e-commerce. So many cool ones out there now that I can enjoy because we built this one little nerdy website. And just like anything else I do, it was like very like MVP, like it's just good enough to get out there and to use. That's one thing I've also learned is like I definitely was a perfectionist. I probably still am to a degree, but I've learned to just ship things and fix it later. Like just get the idea out there so people can start using it, playing with it, then you can improve on it. Don't get hung up on it being perfect. Like I know so many of us have projects at like 90% just like sitting in our files that we never launched. And so it's like good just to like get out the door, fix it later. Most people won't even notice. And that's still our MVP site. But now we have, I think we're coming up on like, I mean, we passed 500 posts like a while ago. So like, and now you can go to websites and like you see the nice chunky, really well thoughtfully designed footer. And I'd like to think we have a small part in that, which is really cool. So there's even more inspiration out there. So yeah, like that was a side project I did. There was Dare to Share. I've also done ones that like we tried and it didn't really do anything. Like we had a gallery for Figma plugins, and then Figma redid their community. So it's a lot easier to find things. So we didn't really need that. So it kind of worked out, but and then I also got to work with different people on that project too. Same with Dare to Share. All people that I still kind of like talk with and collaborate with now. So definitely do it. You'll meet new people. You'll learn new things. You might even solve a problem for yourself. And you can also share it with the world. You never know who you might get to meet.
Yeah. And it's kind of like this community contribution, if you may. Like if there's someone in the audience thinking that I'm not going to build a inspiration site, the side project can be completely different, like some sort of plugin or like what are those sites that just list different resources and so on and so forth, and developers will have their own contributions and things, like stuff that you are known for. But I could ask, if I design a cool footer, what's the process of getting it to footer.design?
Oh man. Well, so Devin now curates it. So you got to get through him. I can't even get some of my footers on there because he'll be like, nope, not good enough. So you'd have to appease the footer gods, which is Devin. But most of it's like, I mean, something unique. If you can get some kind of like subtle animation in there or even an interaction, those bode well. If it's just like a list of links, it's not going to make it in there. So yeah, giving it some personality. I'd say like definitely spend as much time on the footer as you would on the hero, which is like crazy to think about, but that might give you a chance.
Yeah. But I believe I said in the video about footer design that there is like this footer revolution coming. And I'm kind of hoping that is the case already, that people are like finding different places to put their efforts into. But yeah, obviously the bar is high. And as I mentioned, the design plateau, I feel that I usually design two types of footers. Like there's the one with all the links, like very SEO heavy footer, or then there's the minimal with logo in the middle and some boring links on either side, and that's about it. But yeah, maybe I'll add that one to my like design workout routine, like footer reps. I gotta get my reps in. Okay, we are going to jump into things outside of web design and Webflow. We're closing into the end. We gotta land this plane at some point. But before that, I gotta ask, outside of work, what do you like geek on? I know that at some point you were a avid cyclist, if I remember correctly. Can I see a bicycle on the background?
Yep. It's blurred, but yeah, I got my road bike there.
Beautiful. Is that like the one true hobby for you, or do you geek out on other stuff?
Yeah, that was definitely like a huge thing I used to do a lot. I actually took a step back from it, which is weird because it was like my whole personality, to build a business. So I would get up early in the morning, go on, a 2+ hour ride before work. But then I was like, all right, if I'm going to build a business, I want to give it like 100%. I'm going to take that time that I already have blocked out for cycling and put it toward the business, see if I can get this thing off the ground. And so that's what I did for a year. I'm working on getting it back into the routine because it can be tough. And my wife is in school in the evenings and weekends now, so it makes it a little bit tougher. So I've been doing a lot more CrossFit because I can bring the kids with me. You're in and out in an hour. You get destroyed. You get your workout in. So I'm working on getting that back in. So that's one thing I do. I also love to just be outside. So like hiking, paddleboarding, just walking is something I just like to do. Just like kind of unplug, yoga, basically any way I can move and be outside. And like we've got some good mountains here, so and like lakes and waterfalls, so good to get outside as much as possible. But I also have kids, so we'll do lots of kid activities, just like do stuff around the house. So it's definitely more boring these days, but I like it. I like that I've been building a business or a little studio that I've been wanting to open for a long time. So that's been good. And it's still here.
Yeah, the kids like put your priorities in order, so to speak. But I remember we started this conversation and you mentioned that you did a lot of like print design. So do you do anything like creative hobbies or something related to prints or like manual off the computer design stuff?
No, but I've actually, I feel like this is something that parents can struggle with a lot is like, obviously like kids kind of take priority in like your family and you kind of lose some of those hobbies and it's always kind of a bummer. So I'm actually trying to figure out like, I'm like, okay, I like need space for some like real hobbies again. Like, I don't know if that would be like photography or like learning an instrument or like making music. I'm actually trying to figure out what that might be, to like, because in the evenings you've got a couple hours of downtime to like that you need to unwind and like get away from work. So I'm actually actively working on that. I don't know what that will be yet, but hoping to kind of make some space for that.
Yeah, hobbies are great. They are a great way to like unwind, especially when they are like off the computer. But since you mentioned the kids again, knowing your role at work, when your kids are drawing stuff, do you find yourself like art directing them that no, that is not a good color with that one?
They're actually very artistic, and not because of me, because they just kind of taught themselves watching YouTube videos, and like, I don't know, it's actually really cool to see. My favorite thing to do, this would actually probably go under my hobbies, is building businesses with them. I've always been kind of entrepreneurial. I always want to like try to start new projects, and we've kind of started some together. Like one was like designing and creating like greeting cards, and we would sell them at little local markets, or doing dog walking and like designing flyers with them, even making a little website for them. I really like that stuff because it's like you can get away from the client work. Yes, it's still on a computer, but you're building with them and like kind of creating memories together and showing them like you can do this too. Like you don't have to, like you have the tools you need to go and do something you want to do and get paid for it. I think it's like a really important skill for kids to learn. So I actually I really like doing that. And it's like a way for me to unplug. You obviously don't have to take things too seriously. You can kind of let them be in charge and kind of tell you what to do, which is kind of fun, but also like give them some like helpful tips. So that's like one thing I really enjoy doing. We've kind of bounced around. They obviously, with kids, they don't always stick with things forever, but I hope that they remember some of those, like some of what I've taught them. Like they can go do basically anything they put their mind to.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like huge learning opportunities in projects like that. And if one of those grows and becomes like their own, it would be like huge asset to go to college, for example, with, and just run your own business while you're studying or something like that. But yeah, those are cool. Okay, one last thing. I'm not sure if you have watched any of my episodes until the end. There's a little section at the end of every episode. It's a little Finnish section where I tell a Finnish saying. I will translate it to English word for word, and you as a guest have to know or guess what it means. So, are you ready for your saying or idiom or whatever?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, in Finnish, the saying is vedellä hirsiä, and in English, it is translated to drag logs. So, what does it mean when I say that I was just dragging logs?
Oh man. If I were to like take it at face value, I would say like dragging your feet or like waiting around for the perfect moment. But that's just a guess.
Good guess. Not even close. No worries. There's probably been one or two guests that have gotten this one right. Usually these do not follow a logic, or if there is a logic that is somewhere in the history. But to drag logs means to sleep or to snore while sleeping. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have a similar expression like sawing logs.
Yeah. Sawing. Actually, yeah, I have heard that one. So it was not that far fetched. So
I love it.
It's kind of funny when you find like similar phrases, but slightly altered in different languages. Yeah. But okay. This has been a blast. I'm going to have to let you go. But before that, if someone wants to follow you or maybe contact you, where should they go?
Yeah, you can find me at Benten Woodring on X or Twitter and on LinkedIn. That's usually where I spend most of the time. And then if you want to check out some of the work that we've been doing, you can go to NOOON.studio, NOON with 3 O's. We'll be updating that site and refreshing it hopefully in the near future. But yeah, working on kind of like a rebrand and stuff. But yeah, you can find me there. Shoot me a DM. We'll love to chat. If you ever got questions about design or business or anything, any other nerdy hobbies, I always love to chat with people.
Would you like some accountability? Would you like to say when the update is coming?
Yes, early next year. So let's say end of February, but hopefully it'll be done sooner than that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. But okay, Benten, thank you so much for this and all the audience and for the listeners. See you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.